Hello there, I'm Guildmaster Dan, and welcome to the Fourth Wall. And I have somebody I want to introduce you to. So far, YouTube, you've met Texas and Dippy. Well, today, I want to introduce you to, if she's willing, this is Elphaba. And as is appropriate, since we just got Elphaba, say hi, Elphaba. Hi, Elphaba. We're going to be talking about handling companion animals. She's tired. So, Dan, I get that you just got a puppy and you want to talk about animals on the show, but what really do you have to offer when it comes to companion animals? I mean, aren't they just, players with a pet or a guard dog? Well, yes, to a degree, but I've noticed in past games where there's any companion animals, but particularly in games where almost everyone in the group has a companion animal, that three problems tend to pop up. Number one, it tends to drag combat out, especially when they're pets that are guard dogs and the like, that are actually participate in combat. It drags out combat because it adds additional characters to it that you have to take into the initiative and, deal with how they carry out the combat. Number two, since each companion animal has its own personality and such, it's adding more characters to the party. It's a lot more stuff that you have to take into consideration a whole nother character now. And when you have everybody in the group with a companion animal, you've just doubled the size of the party. And as the GM, you have to keep track of all that now. And, of course, number three, a lot of times, players tend to allow their pets to become token pets, or rather RP toys, I like to call them. I'll touch on that later, but those three problems tend to pop up, I find. Now, you can deal with those problems, particularly, let's start with number one, combat growing longer. There are little easy ways that you can get around that. First of all, you can have the pets themselves, the companion animals, act on their owner's initiative. That way, you are only dealing with a single set of you're only dealing with the single party's initiatives instead of, again, a doubled party's worth of initiatives plus any enemies in the combat. If you have them act on their owner's initiative, then you get the simulation of them issuing commands to the animal, and on top of that, it just makes it a little bit easier because there's less numbers you have to keep track of. Now, of course, in the combat, depending upon how you treat companion animals, if you run them like NPCs or if you let the owner role play them, it depends on who's controlling those animals. But those are still additional characters in the combat. You shortened it a little bit by having them act on their owner's initiative, but they still take actions and such. My recommendation is let the owner go ahead and dictate their action, because it's essentially just like extra actions for them. That way, when you go and tell them to think of what their character is going to do, they can also be thinking ahead of time about what their pet's going to do as well. Otherwise, you can run it, but I would only recommend that if your descriptions of what the animals do only shortens the combat, only keeps it moving quick and exciting. But if you have to really stop and think about what that pet does based upon its personality, and it assesses the situation and looking at it from a strategic, almost Munchkin sort of sense, then you probably don't want to be doing it. Leave it to the player so that, you can free up your mind for the enemies that are running around in the combat. Next, the fact you have that problem of you're essentially doubling or adding to the size of your party. How do you really handle that? Most GMs will run them as NPCs. A ranger goes out and finds his companion animal in the form of, a mountain lion. Well, most GMs will run the mountain lion as its own character and just have it be at that. But some GMs also let the players run them. they let them run it as a second character, which that can work great for some people, especially if they enjoy running multiple characters at a time and they're good at coming up with a fun personality for a not necessarily sentient animal to run with. The only problem with doing that is they run the risk of running into the third problem of turning their companion animal into a RP toy or a token pet. So be wary of that. If you got a good role player there that can turn that animal into a whole nother character and really have fun with it, by all means go for that. But you want to be careful about that third part, which we'll touch on in a second. There is one other option though, other than taking it on as an NPC or letting the owner control it. Particularly if you're going to have a game that has a lot of companion animals, like every member of the party has a companion animal. Especially, let's say you're running a Pokemon house game or something where the animals are intelligent. A really neat way that you can get across the different personalities and the owner having to work with the companion animal is to actually give control of that animal to another player. Now, granted, you have to have a good group for this, a group that works well together with their characters and doesn't take things personally, because naturally what you're trying to simulate here is that it's not always easy to issue commands or to get an animal to listen to you, especially if they're an intelligent animal. That's why you're giving it to another player, so that they can be they can have a lot of fun with having that second character and, you know, having it contrast with its owner. The only problem with that is you have to have that good group. You can't have a group that takes things personally and will turn that into an adversarial relationship. If you have that, avoid that. Just go with one of the first two options. But if you have a good group that won't run into that issue, that can, say, go and run a game of Paranoia just fine and won't get, you know, super mad at each other, then that is a good way, especially for intelligent or self-aware animals, to get across that unique nature of the animal having its own personality and wants and even beliefs if it, you know, it is an intelligent animal. Now, finally, I want to talk about this issue of token pets and RP toys. Essentially, I've seen a lot of players out there take this companion animal pet and just really, except for the times when the pet is useful or has an opportunity to be cute, they completely ignore them and forget that they're living creatures. And I find this really dumb, because what is the point of bringing on that companion animal and role-playing out that relationship of master and pet, or master and protector, or master and ward, or protector and ward, rather, if, you know, they're not actually creatures? Well, it's a role-playing game, and if you're not going to role-play that, then there's no reason for that pet to be there. It's not a wind-up toy that, you know, sometimes attacks your enemies. Well, when you wind it up at the tavern, it'll do a little dance to win over the wenches. I've seen a lot of players go and neglect their animals. I once ran a game where two people had a companion animal that were dogs, and they had to cross a desert, and they had a sled to carry their stuff across. And, you know, great idea. We'll hook the dogs up to the sled, and then 2 days later, we'll remember that we didn't give them any water, and we were forcing them to, you know, push the sled along. They were very lucky to save those dogs' lives. But the fact that when that dog wasn't being useful or cute or something along those lines, they didn't even think about it. They didn't think of it as a creature to role-play with. And that's really dumb. I've also heard stories of people who would go and buy horses and then take them on trips and completely forget to feed them the entire way, or to forget to buy feed. So when they get there, you know, horses are all tired, they come out of the dungeon and they're dead because they're starved to death. You know, you run into that risk of players just completely not thinking of these as creatures, and thus not serving the purpose of having a companion animal, being a role-playing experience of being the master and companion. And the thing that there's no real way to solve this with a player. If a player's going to do this, all you can do as a GM is remind them through gameplay that this is a living creature. For example, with those dogs, I inserted descriptions of them slowing down, of them panting a lot. And finally, you know, after the players ignored them for long enough, they collapsed of heat exhaustion, and they were able to tell quickly that these dogs were dying. And then they realized that they hadn't given these dogs water in the desert for like 2 days. These furred creatures that they're forcing to carry their gear. And, you know, they quickly got into pace and started taking care of their dogs. And just something simple like that. You also need to keep in mind that these animals, especially if they're intelligent, especially if you're going to control them as NPCs, you know, they have their own needs and wants. Food, drink, shelter, safety, and if they're intelligent, entertainment are important things to keep in mind if you're running them as an NPC. For players out there, this isn't my that's not my forte anymore because we have Tinder Twigs now, but as a quick bit of advice for you, you should also keep these in mind if you're running a companion animal, either for someone else or your own. These are living creatures, and the whole point of taking it on is to have that role-playing experience. So remember that, you know, they need to eat and drink, and, you know, especially intelligent animals have freaking feelings. That you can't just force them to do things and always expect them to do it mindlessly. No, and, you know, if you kick your pet and stuff, he's going to strike back at you. This is a relationship that you're taking on in the role-playing. You're getting the role-playing experience. That's why you did that in the first place. If that's not why you did that in the first place, that you just took that companion animal because you wanted something cute or you wanted extra attacks in a combat, that is the wrong reason to be doing it, and you frankly should not be doing that. Go find your Munchin group where that's okay. Most groups that's completely missing the point. And you're liable to quickly find your animal end up dead because you forgot to feed it, or because, you know, you pushed it so hard in combat that it gets itself killed for you. The key thing to remember is that this is a role-playing game, and you get the companion animals for a role-playing experience. When you have lots of them, you can run into these different problems, but these are just some quick ways that you can use as game masters to, you know, alleviate some of those problems, to help the players to remember that these are living creatures, and this is a role-playing experience, to, you know, keep your combat from dragging on forever, and, you know, just keeping everything manageable, especially when you have a party that, like, all of them have companion animals, to keep that everything manageable and running along smoothly. Now, granted, there could be more to this conversation I didn't add. By all means, if there's something you thought I should talk about, please feel free to leave a comment below. Same for if you disagreed with something I had to say. Please like, share, and subscribe so we can keep the conversation going. And as always, thank you for watching, and before we see you next time, welcome to Guild Month. I hope you guys are ready. It's Guild Month 2015, and we got some fun stuff planned for you guys, so be looking out for our new videos. Now, we'll see you next time. In many groups I've seen lots of companion animals, like where almost every person in the party has a guard dog or a horse or an eagle, or each of them have gone out and gotten companion animals. I tend to see that that's a 4. 3 Alright, I'm gonna start over. Videos now. We'll see you next time. What? If you couldn't hear that, that's Guildmaster in the background screaming, Guildmaster!